bombing of Iraq, because that can easily turn into the bombing of Syria and the bombing of the positive factions in Syria, which we reject, and, even worse in some ways, the bombing of Iran. So this we do not want. But the point is, this is the warmonger coalition, and they're everywhere, right? This is what, for example, here we have Politico, Thursday, the 19th of June. Crisis in Iraq prompts resurgence of GOP hawks. The other day, I guess it was Thursday morning, we had McCain, Lindsey Graham, this Rubio. Rubio wants boots on the ground, as far as I can see, or he wants the door kept open to boots on the ground. Same thing of Senator Cornyn. And according to Lindsey Graham, he says, world events have proven McCain, Senator Ayotte, Rubio, and other people who have been hawkish, we were right, says Mad Dog Lindsey Graham, who's now gotten through his primary, so he figures he can shoot his mouth off all he wants. So you get the idea, right? They're everywhere. And you know, it's outrageous. And there is blowback, right? There are people who are saying, we never want to see you again as long as we live. But now let's look at a somewhat more sophisticated level. Here we have the Washington Post, Thursday, June 19th. Headline, U.S. sees risk in Iraq airstrikes. And then one of the two stories, veterans debate, did leaders fail or did Iraqis, by Greg Jaffe and Kevin Maurer. And what do we see here? This front page, Washington Post, upper right-hand corner, above the fold, prominent. In an echo of the post-Vietnam debate, some military officers believe that the war could and should have been won. And when you get into this stuff, watch out for this stab in the back story, right? Hindenburg, in 1918, told George Seldes the German army was defeated by the U.S. attack on the German salient at the Meuse-Argonne. That's what defeated. And when Hindenburg was speaking rationally, he said, "Yeah, it was." By the way, it's an attack led by General MacArthur and the Rainbow Division at that point. So basically, Hindenburg says these forces defeated us, and that was MacArthur and those people, right, under the command of this rotten Pershing, right, Wall Street general. But later on, Hindenburg turned around and said, "Oh no, we were stabbed in the back. The Social Democrats, they did it. We were never defeated, the Social Democrats." So you got to watch out when you get these rehashes. And here it comes. So Obama blamed for not delivering the fruits of victory. We'll be right back with this. Hold that thought. World Crisis Radio. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, and reminding you that Petraeus has been attending these Bilderberg meetings, and he's accompanied by his money bag, and that is Henry Kravis of Kohlberg Kravis Roberts, a multi-billionaire. So you got, on the one side, you got the Koch brothers and Mellon Scaife for the reactionaries, but you've also got Henry Kravis, right? And these people are friends of the family of the Bushes, right? So take a look at that. That's in George H.W. Bush, the unauthorized biography, by yours truly, called the Permian Basin Gang. That's where the Kravises go back to. And, of course, Soros and the Steyer on the other side, right? We do not want to have politics where it's essentially fought out among multi-billionaires and everybody else is a pawn, right? This is no good. So, the situation of the Petraeus faction attempting a comeback in grand style, part of this is undoubtedly going on at the Bilderberg with the help of the billions of Kohlberg Kravis Roberts. And Petraeus works for this thing called the KKR World Institute or something like that. That could very well be a center from which some of these current events actually emanate. Take a good hard look at that. Now, what I wanted to point to, though, is that the Petraeus networks are super mobilized. Here on the front page of the Washington Post, once again, Thursday, June 19th, we have the military faction that blames Obama for failing to harvest the fruits of their wonderful victory in the surge. And, of course, the surge is Petraeus, Fred Kagan, Field Marshal Kagan, Kim Kagan. We've got pictures of them walking through the souks way back then, right? And this was against the will of the American people. 2006 election, get out, wind it down, no more losses. No, said Bush, got to have a surge. And that's Petraeus, right? General betray us. And that's where he got his General betray us. But now, here we have retired Colonel Peter Mansour, Mansoor, who served as a top advisor to General David H. Petraeus in Baghdad and wrote a history of the latter years of the war. This character, obvious flack for Petraeus, quote, anyone who was there during the surge came away very encouraged about the future of the country if we had continued to stay engaged. Now, this is baloney of the most vulgar species, but you get the idea. It's the stab-in-the-back legend in fieri, right? It's being created. It's an inchoate version of the legend. And you go over this, how the article says, the chaos in Iraq, this debate could shape the future of the U.S. military. Will they go big conventional divisions, or will they go drones and special forces, and so forth? And we also get another resurgent neocon here, Elliot A. Cohen, historian, I guess, and he's was from Johns Hopkins, served as a senior State Department official during the final years of Mad Dog Bush the Younger. And Cohen is among those who believe that Iraq was on a, quote, fragile trajectory towards success before the U.S. withdrawal. In recent days, this is Cohen now, this is interesting. In recent days, Cohen has detected, quote, real anger at the Obama administration, close quote, among senior members of the military for not pressing the Iraqis harder to accept a long-term U.S. presence. Now, you'll remember what it is. They wanted a status of forces agreement that would give the U.S. Forces immunity, that they wouldn't be tried in Iraqi courts. The fairly standard. Maliki said no, and at that point, Mad Dog Bush said in that case, we're leaving. But now they want to blame this on Obama. It's amazing, right? It's the same logic that would make you think that Lois Lerner is somehow the embodiment of the evil demiurge in the modern world. And then Cohen, however, has to add that the U.S. Army is doing a much worse job of taking a hard look at itself than it did after Vietnam. Anyway, the key point here is the anger. The anger. Now, I would say to those officers, you don't like civilian leadership, you should resign and state your reasons. As Napoleon says, if you don't agree with the strategy, you resign and then you state your reasons rather than agree to the downfall of your army. And that's what these bums in uniform want to do. But you get the idea. This is why so many generals and admirals had to be fired, including starting with Petraeus himself. And, of course, we've got to remember Michael Hastings, right, who was delving into this world, right, the world, and the book that he'd written about McChrystal, right, the commanders, stressing this sleazy anti-civilian control mentality, right, making fun of Biden and Obama. Okay, but you got to watch out with that stuff because a military coup is bad news. So this is the problem we face. Now let's look at ISIS specifically. It's a highly artificial entity. First of all, as I think we said last week, the immediate director and the sort of leadership figure that is offered to the benighted militants of this thing is ARF, Abdul Rahman Faisal, of the Saudi royal family. He's the brother of Prince Saud al-Faisal, the foreign minister, and Turki al-Faisal, the ambassador to London and Washington at various times. So ARF, Abdul Rahman Faisal, that's the boss. Now, it obviously draws on the U.S., on Negroponte and Ford setting up death squads, but the idea is that in addition to the Saudi leadership and the Saudi money, you've got training being provided by the U.S., the CIA, NATO, the British, the French, other facilities being provided by Turkey and Jordan. Here we go, a couple of things now. There was a flurry of articles about this back in March 2013, so 15 months ago. Here we go with Spiegel. This is the German news magazine. Now, rather than try to quote in German, I got the translation here from Reuters, so this is all mainstream. Dateline, Berlin, Americans are training Syria rebels in Jordan, says Der Spiegel. Americans are training Syrian anti-government fighters in Jordan, the German weekly Der Spiegel said on Sunday, quoting participants and organizers. Some 200 men have already received training over the past 3 months, and there are plans to train another 1,200 of the Free Syrian Army. The Free Syrian Army, as far as I can see, has ceased to exist. Some of those guys have fled to Sweden. They've gone back to the hotels where they came from, those lounge lizards. Jordanian intelligence services are involved in the program, which aims to build around a dozen units totaling some 10,000 fighters to the exclusion of radical Islamists, Spiegel reported. Well, that part, they were fibbing. They lied about that. But the 10,000 is pretty much what we're seeing. So the Jordanian intelligence services want to prevent the Salafists, the crazies, from crossing into Jordan, from Jordan into Syria or back, and then returning to stir up trouble in Jordan itself. So you get the idea, right? And then they have various self-serving smokescreen stuff from the U.S. side. Here's another one. It's amply confirmed. West training Syrian rebels in Jordan. This is The Guardian, around the same time, 8th of March, 2013, Julian Borger and Nick Hopkins. Exclusive. Well, of course, by that, I guess it wasn't exclusive by that point. UK and French instructors involved in U.S.-led effort to strengthen secular elements in Syrian opposition, say sources. Well, of course, the secular, they fibbed. And, of course, some of these people can be secular Baathists that are going to be retooled as Salafist, Takfiri crazies. That's perfectly feasible, but you can see what it is. Don't worry about these the little labels they put on these people. This is the 10,000 that have now made up ISIS. Back in a minute. Welcome back to World Crisis Radio, 20th of June, 2014. Webster Tarpley here in Washington. Okay, The Guardian. West training Syrian rebels in Jordan. Early March 2013, 15 months ago. 10,000 people getting trained for this stuff. And remember all that flap about the European Union rules, whether European Union member states were allowed to do this kind of thing, and how the rules then left the door open for the British and the French to do it. And, of course, then they did it. And this is now, the result of that is ISIS. Amazing. So that's where it comes from. A Jordanian source familiar with the training operation said it's the Americans, Brits, and French with some of the Syrian generals who defected, and then other, half of these articles is simply verbiage. William Hague, the foreign secretary, confirms it, talked about the goals of it. There's a planning cell, this is interesting, planning cell at the King Abdullah II, Jordan, Special Operations Training Center north of the capital, Amman. That may be the center of this thing. So you get the idea. And the British were putting in £40 million, $60 million, and on and on. So